Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a reflection on being an artist. I say this because it shows how artistic views can be distorted by money. It shows this through the eyes of a children's television show. This is quite relatable with its other themes, such as the media subtly forcing things onto you. With this stage, there follows the theme of a teacher trying to teach us a perceived moral. However, the moral of the show is not what is directly told to us. Throughout the show, there is an underlying plot which tells a story within the story, which I will explain later. It is this distorted perspective that tries to show us what it is like being an artist trying to get out there. The first episode's tagline is "Be creative." This is Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared's whole philosophy. Take something like Sesame Street, add in some animation and completely reverse the message, and here you have Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. In Sesame Street, you have puppets telling a story with a small moral. For example, Elmo might tell you to eat vegetables, whereas in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, you have a story telling you to be creative with an underlying tone of creativity adheres to strict rules and authority defines them. It's this satirization of the first episode that sets up Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared says creativity is up to interpretation, even if it involves using animal organs as a prop in one of the character's creative pieces to get across your point. This entire series breaks norms to show you its story, which in itself is breaking creative rules. The teacher tells one of the characters in the episode that green is not a creative color, which can easily relate to an authority figure telling you that something isn't creative, even if you think it is. Further adding to this, the same character makes a painting of a clown, something that is genuinely creative. The teacher destroys it for whatever reason, to keep control of the situation. Leading on this episode, score then turns to strings resembling scratching noises as the entire scene starts to change and morph mediums, even showing us the entire TV set turning into some kind of psychedelic nightmare. I believe that this is meant to mean how shows for children can get to a point where they forget they are even a show for children, suggesting brainwashing and people controlling what is shown. This is even more apparent by the message. Be creative. When creative starts to become distorted, reality morphs and we see a different perspective entirely, and a number of disturbing images showing us how these things that feel real can easily distort to tell a different idea within seconds. What can a darker Sesame Street tell us about how some feel the message is given to children, to a point when creativity turns into death and is completely morphed. This points out creativity is relative. In short, this can be explained as who defines creativity. Is it the people sending out the program on the television? Should their rules be taken as final? The ideas of creativity are a key part of the show's identity, and this is a great introduction, it being one of these children's television program. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is very creative. It takes previous ideas and mediums and combines them all into one thing to show a different perspective. This is the sign of an artist. Episode 2 breaks the fourth wall again, 30 seconds into itself. Red Guy, as we will call him, motioning off screen asking who is that. This sets up a key focus of the show, that it is a TV show being made. More on that later. The focus of this episode is on time. This episode in a nutshell is focusing on the fact that everything is new and amazing right now. This relates to advertisement and how time can be used as a schedule for our day, but also as a loop of here and now, using new things to distract you from your own life. The teacher in this episode is very strict and angry, forcing the characters to come along with him. Various instances of rewarding people for going along with him. When two of the characters start to question time or what it is, this makes the teacher very angry, as if even thinking about what it could really mean is the most insulting sign of stepping out of line, showing us even more how the show is about the control of learning. As I was saying earlier, the show says that this can be overwhelming, with the teacher talking about how amazing the future is, with the characters having a seizure while connected to a machine. This machine is supposed to tell and show how amazing all the new gadgets and products are. This show has a very clear image portraying that advertising is quite a bad cycle. The teacher compares time as a merry-go-round, while making large contradictions about his own statements. Another part of this episode is talking about how time can make us grow, age, making us waste away. This is made to create terror in the show's hosts, going more towards how everything is new and right now, so don't die before you can see it all, rather than focusing on the self and important things such as your own life. All of this points towards the show's teachers, quote unquote, becoming even more distorted in their messages, advertising and the push of life being horrible. The ending of the episode, through all the helpless screams during yet another psychedelic torture sequence, we hear the words of the teacher, "Don't worry, eventually everyone runs out of time," further reinforcing that everything is now and current and don't miss it, or you'll rot away and die without experiencing it. This episode's moral was to teach children about consumerist mindsets with real moral warning about it. Episode 3 focuses on the manipulation of the weak and how they can be dragged down by religion, promised to be loved and cared for if they love the leader and the faith more than themselves. This episode is taught by a bee with a soft-toned voice who doesn't answer questions and keeps leading on, regardless of what happens. These ideas are very much presented through another hallucination dreamscape. Episode 3's moral that is presented to the hosts is that people should love each other and focus on following a set of rules, following a particular person or a deity. These ideas of unending love are presented by smiling animal puppets who promise to love the yellow guy and that he loves them too. This is then reflected that their love should only be saved for a special one. The yellow guy continues to say that he is just lonely and doesn't have anyone, which is when the teacher calls him confused and continues to talk about love, contradicting himself even more. This goes on to another animation story that the animals are telling, about the ugliest boy in town, who even though he was ugly, still had a special person, even if he was completely alone. Leading on to their concept of king. This is reflective of the way many cults get people to join, by slowly chipping away at the people and promising them love until saying that they are given love by their leader, their father, continuing to speak about how this community must give everything to this statue, otherwise he becomes angry. I quote, "This is your chance to start anew, and all we're asking you to do, change your name and clean your brain, forget about anything you ever knew, continuing on with how no matter what, if you follow these steps, you'll never be alone." The underlying plot of the TV hosts is strengthened in this episode by not knowing what to do. As already mentioned, they've been told not to be creative or not to think for themselves, so when they get a chance to make their own decisions, they do not make a choice, so they aren't treated even worse. Along with the real moral of the story being to not fall to the lies of cults and religions, as well as talking about how religious teachings fit into children's television, whereas the lesson to the hosts to be more compliant and keep in line, or else everything will fall apart. Episode 4 is when the show really morphs and shows us the real plot. This is also when the show turns into utter chaos. The main message of this episode is that things are designed to keep us in our chair ignoring life. Why live a life when you can just do it in VR? This episode has a lot of references to consumer product profiles, constantly having the same recurring product in many ways. Oats. This is very much the shows how the computer marketing can be used to keep you in your chair in the loop. The whole episode is an advertisement ploy. But what's more important, the real plot of the show. Episode 4 fleshes out the true motives of the show, which is to be advertised. What follows is the show trying to get unreal copies of the hosts via a computer. Red Guy walks out, having no want to be a part of this, onto a fake set of an advertisement for oats, with motion trackers on him. This suggests that they only need him to finish off the advertisement, as they already have the other actors digitally. The true moral of this episode is that without real actors, you don't need to pay them. You can use them to sell literally anything, even oats. Digital reproductions do not have a say. The bleak set reinforces this all as post-production. Once they have enough of the red guy, his head explodes. He is no longer needed. This is when the plot gets much heavier. Episode 5 is when the plot gets noticeably much darker. This time the teacher's intrusions into the set are not taken well, and both characters resist. It is also important to mention that the red guy is no longer on the set, as he left in the last episode. The only way to describe episode 5 is a clusterfuck. Red guy is clearly trying to reach out to his friends through the phone, etc., as the teachers continue to push around his friends, so much so that the duck becomes noticeably upset about the show and what is being pushed, running off and knocking the camera over, which shows a lot of details about the show in the background. What ensues is another torture scene of the duck being eaten by cans, hence the lesson being about food, because the producers of the show realise he is not going to cooperate anymore. This is a deep reflection of how actor marketing works, how if you do not cooperate you will be canned and kicked out. The person ringing the phone was the red guy, the whole time. And in the ending credits we can see him walking away from a red phone booth. It's at this point when the show is turned to utter chaos, posing a deep reflection of the nature of television program. Episode 6 has the most to unpack because it not only has the origin of the show, but it also has the end all in one episode. Within the first 120 seconds, the last host is killed off by the teacher because he refuses to go along with the lesson. He's quite sad about the deaths of his friends, understandably. This reinforces the themes of treatment of actors on advertised networks even more. What follows next is a series of flashbacks from Red Guy's perspective, showing how he created the show, showing him working a dead-end job, showing his want to be an entertainer instead of doing such things. The work of the camera and the monotone voices is very much meant to show that life feels very boring and monotonous, with droning piano music that's out of key. You see him in a bar feeling the same emotions of everyone is so self-absorbed and boring. Sitting alone, he gets up and goes on stage with some props. This is where he makes the first pitch of his show. This all ties back to the idea of an artist trying to make it big while doing this. He's completely ridiculed by the people watching him, booing him off stage. Yet in the backgrounds there is a recurring character, who we have seen many times in the backgrounds of sets hovering menacingly. Yellow Guy's father, Roy. To summarise what is being shown to us, Red Guy is an artist who wanted a TV show to entertain. Roy offered to fund it, but in the process distorted it with money and advertisement. Red Guy pulls the plug on the show in a very literal sense. After this we are brought onto another set, a much more low-budget set than the previous one seen in the show. One without money, without advertisements. After doing an in-depth explanation of what the plots of each episode means, it is time to explain how it all reflects being an artist. Red Guy is the artist of the series. The original idea was his. However, he was shunned and ridiculed by his peers to get it off the ground. He met a person who saw the potential and wished to get it out there. However, in doing so, he turns it into an advertisement, which eventually takes over the show. So much so that it kills off its own actors to replace them with compliant copies who will go along with the final product placement. Unpacking all the major themes that relate, including media diversity and what is being sold to you each time you turn on the idiot box. Not only that, but what does the show say to me about being an artist? The real moral of the show is not to sell yourself. Red Guy in the end had a more low-budget show, but we can see that it was more accurate to his original idea. Personally, I've had many people say that I should turn my passions into work, into money, but frankly, how could I do that if I'm passionate? With the need to make money comes the need to be a sellout. As a project gets bigger and bigger, you need to make more money to make it bigger, as goes with art. What I am to propose is that having stress of money behind something creative completely ruins what you are trying to do, often corrupting it from the inside, which is why it is my choice never to do anything like YouTube, music, or my artwork full time. This is the message of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Money corrupts. Hey guys, this one took longer to make than usual. Consider liking and subscribing because it helps me out a lot. Leave a comment on what you think I could do better. Thank you for watching the video. Have a nice day.